I've heard about some of the stories where you've worked with walk-ins, split souls, attached souls, just a lot of things that you don't hear about often with the typical past life regression. How did you get into this?
Oh my goodness. I would say in the past year and a half is when I began to have experiences with walk-ins. And it's not something that I was even familiar with previously. I remember one time I was doing a session with someone and he came to me in very desperate. He was very, very desperate for help because he was tired of being miserable all of his life. He suffered from depression. He was not able to carry through his entire shift at work. And he always felt like he wasn't there. He wasn't fully grounded. So I was like, oh my goodness. And when he came into my office, he was frowning. I mean, the guy, he did not smile once at all. One thing that I do is when I touch somebody's crown chakra, I get downloads. And when I touched his, I was like, you have multiple souls inside of you. And he's just like, I thought I was going crazy before. I mean, what does this mean? And I was like, well, you have contracts with these other souls. One of the souls is your father, who is currently living in this life. And another contract is with someone that you knew in a previous life who's supposed to help you. Some of the things so basically, he's had past lives with both people. And one was for karmic reasons, as well as learning lessons with his father that he decided to reincarnate with, but not just meet a person, in which he did, but also have a part of his soul live inside of him and have experiences through him. So they were really wanting to strengthen their weaknesses, gain from each other's gifts, and grow really to evolve further. Well, what ended up happening was when he was born, his father's soul split and a part of his father's soul came inside of him. That created a lot of chatter in his head. And it's interesting because I was having this conversation with someone the other day about how sometimes we can have multiple souls inside of us and not be aware of it. And he was having this gentleman was having a session with me, and he's a medical doctor. And he's like, is that like having a split personality, or can someone be diagnosed with schizophrenia or, borderline personality? I said, yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times the medical system does try to treat what the behavior is, what the challenges are. And then at the same time, they may be not fully connected to themselves, not fully connected to their gifts, not completely clear. And sometimes it can cause a sense of fogginess. So when we have multiple souls, it's really important to differentiate what's you and what's theirs. Kind of like what you're talking about as far as being an empath. Now imagine when you have these other influences inside of you, like there could be this chatter of somebody not in agreement with what you want to do. So there was a lot of conflict between him and his father. And he also took on some of his father's habits throughout the years, like drinking and just some of the very unhealthy behaviors and ways of being, like lashing out with anger, suffering from depression. Not all of it was his. It was partly his father's. And this other soul who he went way back with, he was here to help him. And what happened with him was when my client had a near-death experience when he was a child, when he fell off of a second floor balcony, this other soul decided to walk in and help him survive. And so since then, he had this one soul, I should say, that was connected to him, trying to help him through some hard times in his life, who had his own way of thinking and being that would influence him. And then there's the father who had his way of thinking and being that influenced him, which became very chaotic. When I first met him, he was not in his body at all. So usually when I am doing a session with someone and they're not in their body, I don't feel my feet. It's like, I'm like, oh. So the first question I asked him was, are you in your body? And he's like, no, I'm never in my body. He's like, I'm always floating. I don't know where I'm at. I can't even focus. Or if I try to do something, I'm so split. I should do it like this. I should do that. No, I should do this instead. And then I change my mind and then I beat myself up for making the wrong decision. That causes a lot of chaos in somebody because they don't have a sense of clarity and knowing what is truly for their highest good. One thing that I learned, and which I did in his case, was that we have a lot of control over our contracts. Our contracts, what we decided in our current life and before we were reincarnated, as well as our contract with other souls that may be a walk-in, that we may have been born with, that may be inside of us, that are influencing us. So what I did was I decided to communicate with each of these other souls that were inside of him. And I asked about their purpose and whether they were able to accomplish their purpose, all of them, which was supposed to be mutually beneficial. They were all supposed to grow from each other. Well, they decided, no, this is not working out. We're causing more problems. We're doing more damage than good, which was the truth. And ironically, my client, who was in for his first session, by the way, this poor guy, so he had nothing to build up to. It was like he's faced with all these souls that now we have to manage and figure out, what do we want to do with your contract? What lessons do you have to learn? How can you depart in peace? And do you want to depart in peace? So they all decided it would be for the highest good to depart in peace. And then I pretty much cleared some of the karma that was between them. Some accumulated in this life as a result of all the chaos, and some as a result of past life connections that they had together. So once we were able to determine, what they gained, what was still pending, what the life lessons were, and how they were able to depart in peace, I then did some healing work and some new decision-making. I guided each soul through a new decision-making process so that they could each get what their soul needed and understand what is for their highest good and depart in peace. So I changed the contracts. I ended the contracts between them. And once I did that, he completely changed Melissa. It was no longer the same person. When he came back into my office for his second session, the whole time he was smiling from ear to ear. I was like, who is this guy? I was like, I'm like, how are you doing? He's like, amazing. And I'm like, you're not the same person. He's like, I know. He's like, I'm getting along with my mom. I have a potential new girlfriend that we're getting to know each other. I am able to work throughout my entire shift and I feel very positive and things are under control. It's like I'm not flying off the handle for every little thing. I actually sit back and think about whether or not this is even worth going there, or if so, how I would like to address matters in a healthy manner. So he complete 360, no longer the same person, which is, I have a million experiences of this, but that's just one to talk about for now.
An incredible story. Do you mind if I ask you some questions about your work? I'm so curious about how this process works for people. So,
Sure.
if you've been feeling disconnected from spirit, disconnected from divine love, I have an offering for you. I now offer one-on-one energy work sessions. It's my very favorite work that I've ever done. I completely rebalance your energy field and give you a transfusion of divine love and healing energy for any specific area of need, and follow it up with feedback on what I find in your energy field, a little bit of spiritual coaching, and simple takeaway practices that you can take into your life and implement to help you cultivate a deep connection with divine love. I offer 30-minute sessions, 45-minute sessions, and I'm currently offering 50% off on my 4-session package. Check the link in the description to sign up. Do you mind if I ask you some questions about your work? I'm so curious about how this process works for people. So,
Sure.
you mentioned when you touch people's crown, you receive downloads. Do those show up as like visual, or is it a knowing, or how does that work for you?
It's so when I touch somebody or when I get downloads, I don't always have to touch them because honestly, most of my clients are remote. So I do both remote and in person. But if they're in person, it's convenient. Oh, it's just bam. It's very quick. I don't have to really tune in. It's like touch, the switch is turned on, I get downloads. When I first touch somebody or tune in, I get a feeling. It's usually a lot of emotions that start to surface. And I get some sensations in my body. Sometimes I find it hard to breathe. Sometimes I just want to cry. Sometimes I start shaking. I mean, it's all these different sensations. Most often, what's very common is goosebumps. That's very, very common. So when I tune into the sensations, let's say that I'm feeling a lot of pressure in my heart, because it's like stepping inside of them. So I'm feeling what's going on inside of them. And most often it's going beyond their conscious mind. So they're not even aware of it. When I step in, then I start to get the images that follow. So from the sensations follows images. And then I begin to, sometimes I'll get a word. Sometimes I get a person's face or a person's name even. Sometimes I have visions of location, sometimes of a time or how many lifetimes ago this may have been and who this pertains to. So as I start to get information, and it is a step-by-step process because, for example, I may feel like I'm drowning and I'm like, I can't breathe. I see choppy water. It's at night and da, da, da. And then if they want me, they're like, oh my God, what happened? Where are you? It's not like something that I can always jump ahead. It's like a step-by-step process. It's like watching a movie. You don't watch it from the ending. It's from the beginning. And I'm like, let's gather the pieces to the puzzle and find out exactly what happened and how it pertains to your intention and your challenges today. Majority of the time when I get insight, it's past life related. And in this life, we have triggers. And the triggers can be certain people that awaken it or certain feelings, or we may go somewhere and something get awakened, or even like, for example, I can watch a movie and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm in this past life with this actor, for example. So that's very common. At any rate, so going back to the process, once I begin to unfold exactly what happened, who all was involved, and how it's connected to their current life's challenges, then we know exactly what we're working with that is really going beyond the conscious mind. I have a lot of clients that are therapists, and the reason why they come to me and they've sent a lot of their patients to me is because they've done all the work that they possibly can do as far as their conscious minds can remember, right? This is about going to the root. And that's really my gift. My gift is helping people reveal what the root is, unfolding it, knowing what decisions they made, what karmas they need to clear, what lessons they need to learn, and who all the healing opportunities can benefit, because we're not in it alone. And there's always, like, when we do the healing work, other people benefit as well. And it also affects our relationships and how we move forward, feeling, and basically how we feel on the inside is how we experience world on the outside, you know?
Yeah.
So it's it's a process. It's an unfolding process. And once I unfold what's there, then it's about helping people move through the healing process. Most often that consists of lying down in a comfortable position, the use of crystals and essential oils that really help with the energy flow. And while somebody's in a very relaxed state, a lot of times people do fall asleep during that process. Then I do the reprogramming. I initially learned, hypnosis many years ago, a couple of decades ago. And, I got certified in Reiki. So it's like I was very familiar with regressing people. And that's how I originally started my practice. I thought, okay, I'm just going to use hypnosis and help people get to the root. Well, when I did that, I realized that people are often limited, because imagine if you are swimming in a pool of emotions and I'm telling you, okay, let's go back, and they go back. Well, they might be too overwhelmed, or they may not have the capacity to be able to see what all happened, right? To gather all the necessary information to know then what we need to do with it. As a result, before I knew it, when I started my practice in 2018, I just began to automatically get downloads instead of regress people. 99% of the time I get downloads, but 1% of the time I may have to still regress somebody because for whatever reason, my guidance is showing me that they need to get their own answers, and it's going to be most beneficial for them. Now, for those who are empaths and who have a lot of experience with spiritual work, sometimes we work side by side. It's like I'm able to see things and then they're able to see even more things. I'm able to feel things, they feel it, and then they feel more. So it's like we kind of work together as a team. It really depends on where someone's at, but I pretty much meet them where they're at and just take things one step at a time.
Thank you so much for explaining. You've done some soul retrievals, and that's a very interesting topic. So is that like souls who are stuck in between like this realm and the afterlife, or souls that are maybe stuck in a different realm somewhere? I've heard of both.
Yes. So in my book, Bridging Realms, I actually have a chapter on soul retrieval. Can I read a small paragraph just to define what soul retrieval is? Okay. When an individual experiences a traumatic death event or undergoes a significant change in their life, including death itself, a part of their soul may become fragmented or separated from the rest of their being. The ultimate goal of soul retrieval is to guide souls stuck in the sorrows of life after death toward the light, without judgment or hesitation, so they can find peace and move forward in their journey of expanded consciousness. Sometimes when I do soul retrieval, it's because there are parts of us that might be stuck back in time, and it may also pertain to others. For example, I've done many soul retrievals where it was for an entire group of people that may have experienced a certain trauma, and whether it's past life or present life. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be somebody that may have passed over. We can do soul retrieval over a trauma that someone may have had in their current life even. So it's helping those parts of us that are stuck back in time to develop more fully, to rise above the trauma, and to move more into the light so that they can be resourceful and proactive in a healthy way. Soul retrieval, I also do for those who have transitioned, who are stuck in the afterlife. I just did that yesterday with a client's son who passed in February. He was totally stuck in a very, very dark place after a very traumatic death. And so I will also add, since I'm not mentioning this individual's name, that this gentleman committed suicide, unfortunately. He could not take the pain of living any longer. He was very foggy. And some of the things that I described to this lady, because I mentioned to her, I said, he was very foggy. I said, he still is. He's in a state of fog and darkness. I said, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of chatter in his head. He's not clear at all. He was very overwhelmed. And the reason why he turned to substance abuse was to try to control his mind, his emotions. He had no control over it. She's like, you're absolutely right. Furthermore, Melissa, what was really fascinating, I asked her to, now she lives out of state. So I asked her to text me a picture of her son. She sent me a picture of her son. And the second that I looked into his eyes, he told me, he said, there's something in my head. I need to get this out. There's something in my head. And the second he said that, I was like, oh my goodness, he has another soul inside of him. Then when I got that message, I realized that other soul he was born with in this life that he just transitioned from. And he had a contract with that soul. And they were related and friends. They had multiple lives together in the past. And so this soul was supposed to help him and live through his experiences. And that way they can stay connected and learn and grow and help each other in their journeys, right? Well, instead of that, it became more of a, why are you dating this girl? Date that girl. I don't like her. I don't like this. So it was like this constant conflict. He didn't understand what was going on in his head. It was too overwhelming. He was never able to calm his mind. There's always this chatter, and it's like, and everything, it didn't make sense. It's like total opposites. Like 1 second he felt like this or thought like this. The next second it was entirely different. So as a result, unfortunately, he started to use more and more substances to self-medicate and to try to stop that chatter and calm his mind, which made matters worse. Unfortunately, he committed suicide. Well, now he realized, now that he's up there in another dimension, he still has the same problems. Our problems don't go away. Some people think they can take the easy route and be done. No, it doesn't work that way. It continues. However we feel here, it continues. Not only that, but now he's created bad karma for himself. We're not supposed to take our own lives. We're supposed to learn our lessons. We're supposed to evolve. We're supposed to grow. We're supposed to live our lives with purpose and use our gifts in the world, to help each other. What I did was I asked the two souls, him and the other soul, if they wanted me to separate them, if they were done with this contract. And they begged me, they said, please, yes, let's end this. We don't know how. And I said, that's okay. It's my job to help with that. So as soon as I separated them, Melissa, what was really fascinating is that I didn't even gather from the other soul that was in him, connected to him, what his plan was. But as soon as I disconnected them and that cord was cut between them, I literally saw the other soul fly and go and walk in to somebody else. I mean, like that in an instant. I was like, are you kidding me? In the meantime, it's going to be too much information to share with my client because she's already overwhelmed about all that's going on. So let's put that on the back burner. And I tried to explain to her this was the problem. This is what's going on. I separated the souls, and he delivered some messages in regards to his mother, like, because she was really concerned. Did I do anything wrong? Could I have done something to help him? So she was living with guilt, which is a horrible thing to live, in addition to grieving over the loss of her loved one, right? So imagine, oh my God, why didn't I stop him? Why didn't I know? What could I have done different? What does he have to tell me? Please tell me, am I at fault? And he said, absolutely not. She has done nothing wrong. He absolutely loves her. Nobody could have stopped him. And now he needs to figure out what he wants to do in his next life. And I told her, I said, if and when you choose to, we can always do a session centered around his soul to help him get prepared so that he doesn't have a worse life after this and is better off. And so hopefully he can have a more peaceful journey. So she's going to think about that. But in the meantime, for both of them, the mother and son, to have a higher understanding as to why he had the challenges that he had, why he would constantly bang his head against the wall, against the crib when he was a little kid, because he was trying to get the soul out of his head, this chatter out, this energy that was not serving him. And he didn't know how else to do it, which also led to concussions and other issues that we won't get into. But sorry, I know I shared several things here, but part of it was really about helping him rise above that whole trauma of suicide and have a higher understanding in terms of why he had the challenges and better position him for his next life by clearing that trauma and making new decisions and releasing that other soul that was attached to him.
Thank you so much for sharing. Hey, it sounds like coming in with an attached soul is probably not a good idea.
Not in most cases.
Yeah.
Not in most cases. And if it is going to be a good idea, sometimes some people are like, no, leave that soul alone. I need him or her there, right? I've had people tell me that. For example, we don't always come into this world with an attached soul. Can I share another example?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did a home energy clearing about a week and a half ago for this couple. And the lady, she's a psychotherapist. And she was telling me about some of the special connections that she's had with some of her patients that are deceased now, with some of her deceased loved ones, and so on. I asked her if I can touch the crown of her head. She said, yeah, absolutely. And when I did, I clearly got the message that she has 5 souls inside of her. This is in addition to her.
Wow.
5. Okay. And we began to explore who these souls were. As we began to unfold, I explained to her what this soul's purpose is, this soul, and what she's gaining for each one. And she asked me, she said, do not remove them. I need them. They're helping me in my practice, and I want to keep them there, and I love them. Now, Melissa, the really cool thing is one of the souls, she's like the glue of the family that's inside of her. She literally helps manage these other souls so they can all work together as a team. Isn't it fascinating? That is just not common at all. So she's like, yes, I need her for this. I need him for this. I need them for this. She's like, they're all serving a positive purpose. Great. So we decided to keep all of the souls that were inside of her there. Now, there's also another example of when we have a soul inside of us. I have this one client that I was doing a session with, and she's out of state. She flew in the first time for her first session, but then she's been remote since. So we were doing a session, and all of a sudden I was like, there's another soul inside of you. And she's like, you've got to be kidding. But the way she said it, I was like, uh-oh, Erica. It was like, I'm in trouble. I'm like, she's going to think I'm crazy, you know? And I said, no, does that resonate with you or not? And she said, absolutely. That confirms what I was told. And I said, what were you told? She said, well, not too long ago, she saw a medical specialist. She went to her to figure out what nutrients her body was missing so she could, stay on top of her diet and feel her best and do her best. She's a physical therapist, and she also does a lot of coaching and helping people. So it's important to keep that, her physical health in the best shape possible. Well, when she did the testings, her DNA showed, Melissa, that she has 2 sets of DNA. 2.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that was even possible.
I know. It's like all these fantastic things have just been unfolding because I'm not the type to really learn about all these different teachings and everything. So for me, it's like firsthand experience. It's like dive in and here it is. I get revealed what's going on. Now, the way that it happened in her case was that when her mom was pregnant with her, she was pregnant with twins. And so her twin died in the womb. So there's different pronunciations, chimerism. That's what it's called. So what happens is when one dies in the womb, it attaches itself to the other. So in effect, she was born with her twin's soul inside of her. What this doctor told her is, you swallowed your twin, because she was familiar with that. She knew what she was working with. She said that she had never shared this with anybody. And the only reason why she felt safe to share it with me was because I told her first. She's like, otherwise you would not have heard it from me because it sounds crazy. I said, yeah, absolutely. Unless if it's your experience, then you're probably going to think it's something too far-fetched to even believe or comprehend. But in her case, it made complete sense. Now, Melissa, what was happening was this other soul that was her daughter in a past life. By the way, let me take a step back. The reason why we even went there was because she had this dream of seeing this little girl in the passenger seat. And so she reached over to get something and accidentally scratched the little girl. And the little girl told her something along the line of, don't worry, I'm okay. Something like that. And so when she was telling me the dream, I said, oh no, there's more to this little girl than just a dream. And when I said that, we both got like serious goosebumps. And then when I started to get downloads, I was like, oh, this little girl is inside of you. So that's how I began to see what was going on, the connection between that little girl who they knew each other in a past life and then in this life. So what was happening between them was it was creating a lot of uncertainty within her. For example, she would want to go get vanilla ice cream, for example, if it's her favorite ice cream. But then as soon as she's about to order, she'll order chocolate. She's like, what the heck? Why did I do that? I didn't want chocolate. It's because of this other part. So in some ways, without even like, it wasn't the other soul's intention to interfere. It was more to be in for the ride and live through her experiences and grow that way. So really having a completely different experience and ways of being and integrating some of her strengths and gifts. So because my client is an empath, she would feel what the other soul wanted or how the other soul felt about an individual or how she did something. And then she would question herself. What I had to do in her case, because they wanted to continue their contract and the other soul wanted to remain within her, I had to separate their energies and create some boundaries and also help her have a higher understanding so she can practice discernment like, oh no, that's her. That's not my feeling, or that's not my idea, or that's not something I would do. So boundaries, a sense of separation, a higher understanding to help them have a more peaceful journey together and accomplish their soul's goals.
Absolutely fascinating, Erica.
Thank you.
We've talked about attached souls and soul retrievals. Do you have any experiences with split souls?
Yes, many. Let's see. In one of my chapters in my book, it's about my client, Dennis, who has had near-death experiences, or consciously he knows of a near-death experience that he had. But when he was a child, he also got accidentally ran over by a truck. When it happened, I got the word coma, even though he has no recollection of what happened, of being in the hospital. But he was in the hospital for like 9 or 10 days. He does not remember at all being in the hospital, and nor does he remember what happened. But what I got was and that was my insight, when he was in a coma in the hospital after this getting ran over by a truck, that his soul split. This individual, he wanted to experience multiple lives at once. So sometimes when a person's soul splits, it's because there's so much that we want to accomplish, and we feel that our soul has the capacity to do this. Now, sometimes it can cause a lot of problems. A lot of times it does because, for example, one of the side effects is not feeling like you're fully here, feeling disconnected, or feeling the other part of yourself's energy that's living somewhere else. Well, so that did create some of this challenges within him. I was able to unfold where some of the other parts of his souls are and what they're doing and their purpose and how that is for his highest good. Some of them were here on earth. They walked into another body, some in another dimension. And even one part of his soul walked into this guru's body, who wanted to really gain from those spiritual aspects of this guru. And so once we established what was going on with him, and to help him be more focused and present and grounded and resourceful, we first helped him connect. And then what we did was we had to help kind of separate the energies so that he can be more on purpose with his current existence in this body, and then allow the other parts of him to have their own separate experiences And that way they're not interfering with each other and either feeding off of each other or, enabling one another or affecting one another in a negative way. Because, for example, I have this one client that came in and she was a teenager and her parents had taken her to therapy, to different healers, all kinds of different modalities and techniques and things that she had tried. And she was still suffering from depression and not able to focus on, the task in hand. So it was really interfering with her schoolwork, with sports, with depression, and it's almost like she was always afraid something was going to happen and always afraid that she wasn't going to have enough, which didn't make any sense because she has the most amazing parents and sister. The whole family came into the session. They came in person into my office. So it turned out that there is a part of her soul that's living a separate life. And that other part of her soul, who's in another state in the US, is exactly the opposite of what her life is like here. She's been homeless, abusive, a relationship, has lived in poverty, had an abusive father. Like everything was the opposite, not knowing how she was going to survive, continuously getting abused and so on. When I explained to them that this other part of her soul, first of all, is about twice her age, what happened was that soul needed to have those experiences, the karma, the lessons, the suffering. She was supposed to experience all of that for whatever reason, but it was unbearable. It was too much for her to handle. So as a result, when my client was going to be born, a part of that soul split and came inside of her and wanted to have the opposite life, something to help her be able to keep her contract in that life and to have more of a sense of balance, at least energetically, right? But unfortunately, what happened was my client was feeling all of the other parts, pain and suffering. So what she would describe had nothing to do with the life that she was living in this physical existence. It was in the other physical existence. And when I explained that to them, Melissa, her father began to cry. I mean, when he was crying, he was bawling. He was like, what? He was like hyperventilating. He was in such shock, but at the same time, so relieved to hear a confirmation of what he's been feeling. He said to me, I was always telling my daughter, you have nothing to worry about. You're always going to have a roof over your head. You're always going to have food to eat. You're always going to have a family to love you. Don't worry about anything. And then his wife, who's sitting on my right side, the husband was in front of me. As he's saying this, his wife is like, you know what? I always told him to stop talking this nonsense because it didn't make any sense to me. We are perfectly fine. Why are you telling our daughter this? We're not homeless. We have food to eat. Why would you even say that, right? Because the wife had no idea, but the husband is an empath and was able to feel what the daughter was feeling and was giving her these words of like confirmation that everything is okay to put her mind at ease. So then when I asked my client, the teenager, does this resonate with you? She said, absolutely. Now I know what's been going on inside of me. So what I did was I did a little and then I got the message that I'm supposed to help the other part of the split soul so that she can feel more sense of power and focus and strength so that she can break free of some of these limitations that she was surrounded with, such as an extremely abusive partner who was continuously abusing her and keeping her down and so on. I did some healing work on the other part of her split soul. And then I closed the door. I said, it's important that you keep your experiences separate. Do not try to help her, because subconsciously she was trying to help her survive by giving her energy. And then she would be depleted and lacked focus and motivation and didn't feel like she was all there. So I separated the two. I did some healing work for the other. I did some separate work for her because they each needed different work, and also helped her learn a focusing exercise to bring her attention to her third eye, and to do that, especially before like taking tests or sports or anything that required concentration homework. Like her homeworks would take her hours instead of minutes to do because she wasn't all there. So I worked on her soul. I worked on the split part soul. I separated the two. And since then, I have heard of no issues that they originally came to me with.
How common would you say that it is for split souls and attached souls to happen? Is that like kind of rare, or is it more common than we would think?
I used to think it was extremely rare because it was new for me. So one of the things that I realized was when I first started, so what inspired me to write my book last year in March 2024 was when I saw one of my clients living two simultaneous lives at one time. So when I saw that, that's when my guidance told me, you have to write a book and you have to include this in your book. After that, Melissa, I have found that I am coming in contact with more and more and more and more and more people because I have the capacity to be able to see that now, whereas before I wasn't ready for it. I hadn't built up to that, or I didn't have the capacity, or for whatever reason, I wasn't ready for that. But now I'm seeing how common it is. Now, do I find that with most people? Not necessarily. No. Maybe I would say in the past year, maybe half the people that I've worked with, at most, that I have found that they've either had a walk-in or their soul is split, or, they have the attached soul and whatnot.
I interview a lot of pre-birth experiencers who talk about planning their lives. Do you think this is something that's planned, or is it more of like a mistake that happens?
I have found that most often it is planned. Let me tell you when it is a mistake. I have another chapter in my book regarding this lady that she was trying to overcome her addiction with alcohol. And so one time when she was out drinking, she fell, she had a concussion. When that happened, there was a walk-in soul that was in the neighborhood. He died a drunk, basically. And so he just walked right in and decided to have a party. Basically because they were aligned vibrationally. So sometimes when we're aligned, or sometimes when our vibrations are low enough, or we get out of our body through either use of substance or however that we are out of our body, or, it could happen at any time. Another soul that is kind of vibrating in the same frequency can walk in without us even knowing and create challenges without us even knowing. And it's not until I go in there and realize oh, by the way, when you were drunk and you fell and you had a concussion, that's when this walk-in happened. And this is how he's been influencing you. And so in those cases, I do soul retrieval and help the other soul get whatever it is that they need, and then help them transition to another dimension so that they leave my client alone. So sometimes it does happen by accident like that. And a lot of times it can be a contract that we have, whether it's before we were reincarnated or before we were reincarnated, and then we start this life with this other soul. And, or I have another instance of a client where she decided that when she was going to be 16, that she was going to have this walk-in, because by then she would have had whatever experiences that her soul needed to have alone. And so she wanted to have this walk-in come in to help her with the next stage in her life, in which that walk-in did. Had a lot of male energy and really wanted her to accomplish her goals. But what happened was, once he came in, her goals completely changed. She was no longer the same person. She didn't have a desire to do the same things and so on. And then later in life, that soul helped her become very successful in her business. And that was part of her contract with the other soul that joined her when she was 16 years old. But what happened later was, this other soul was very aggressive, was very cutthroat. It was all about more and more and more and more money, accomplishing more and more, without kind of losing sight of some other factors like her well-being and other people's and so on. So it began to have a more negative effect than positive. But because this other soul had accomplished his goal of helping her, grow this very successful business and learn to be a very successful businesswoman, then it was time to depart ways. So we ended the contract. They departed in peace because she no longer wanted the negative effects of this other soul dominating her every move and basically taking over. And sometimes it would lead to like angry outbursts, just kind of losing herself, not having control, and doing whatever it took to just, to be more and more and more successful, instead of, it wasn't always for her highest good, whatever that she was experiencing.
Erica, thank you so much for being willing to share your experiences and your work today. I would love to give you a chance to share with people where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah. And thank you for having me. They can find me at healingwish.net, which is where, all my contact information is. They can also email me at erica@healingwish.net. That's ERICA at healingwish.net or healingwish.net.
Wonderful. I will have that link in the description for people. And I would like to close out by asking you two questions that I ask all of my guests. The first one is, I ask people some variation of this question. So I usually ask my NDE guests how people can connect with the joy and the expansiveness of the other side while in the body. You've always had that connection to spirit since you were a little girl. Do you have any recommendations for people on how to open up that connection and experience it while in the body?
Absolutely. The main thing is to work through any layers that is covering their heart and soul. Sometimes it may require inner child work, past and present life work, whatever walls that they've created as a protective mechanism or survival mechanism, to work through that so they can be more tapped into their heart and soul. When we're more tapped into our heart and souls, we're also more connected to source and our divine guidance. And when we're living our life with purpose, we have a sense of peace. joy, unconditional love, and desire to use our gifts to help others.
And my final question is, if you could give one message to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
Everything happens for a reason. And sometimes when we think that the most devastating thing happened to us and how are we going to survive this, just know that equivalent to how traumatic or difficult a challenge may be, that's how big of an opportunity we have for healing and growth. So everything does happen for our highest good.
Thank you so much for watching. My guests' links can be found in the description box. If you have had a near-death experience, pre-birth experience, out-of-body experience, past or between life memories, or spiritual awakening story that you would like to share, find the link to apply in the description box. If you would like to support the channel, we have a few fun ways that you can do that. I do have a merch store linked in the description. We've put some of the phrases on t-shirts that you guys requested. I have affiliate links to my favorite blue blockers, my favorite red light panel, and a couple of other companies that I work with. You can join my membership at the Sanctuary. You can sign up for an energy healing. I also offer a 4-session energy healing package. You'll find all these links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Now go live your most extravagantly loving life.